Hello everybody, today's video is about Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson, and I explore in great detail in this video of what is going on and the dynamic between the two. So I get into the real astrological nitty-gritty of what's going on. I'm comparing the main chart, the D1 chart, with the Navamsha chart, the D9 chart for Boris, and how Dominic Cummings has this powerful influence over him. And you're going to discover all of those secrets and all of those combinations in this video. So get yourself a drink, get yourself some popcorn, and listen in for this one because it's a cracker. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. Hoagie Meister here, and today my video, this is a real cracker, even if I say so myself. So if you've got some popcorn ready or any drinks or anything like that, I would say go for it, because I'm about to give you some astrological and numerological gossip almost and insight into the current situation with Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson. Now the thing is, look, with the reason why I do these videos is to give people insight, into different things, what's going on in nations, what's going on in the world. And of course I've looked at Elon Musk, and I'll continue to look at other different people and characters, and people like King Jong-un and all this kind of stuff, just to find out insights of what's going on. Now I have had requests in to do some other people. I've been asked to do people like Vladimir Putin and stuff like that, and I will definitely look at and consider those options. But I really felt that I had to talk about the situation in the government with Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson. And I was just trying to figure out, probably like most people, which is like, what on earth is going on? Why is this guy still around? I mean, for those that don't know, and maybe those watching internationally, and who don't know who Dominic Cummings is the chief advisor to the government, appointed by Boris Johnson, and the Svengali and architect behind policies like Brexit and the current stay at home policy. He works a lot on the government's branding, on its communication, and he's a senior advisor. And what has become revealed is that essentially during the lockdown, Dominic Cummings took his wife and his son. His wife was suffering from symptoms of COVID. The government rules were that you were to stay at home and self-isolate regardless. And what he ended up doing was taking almost 260-mile trip to Durham to see his parents, who apparently are quite mature, which could have put them at risk. And then he was then seen at a place called Durham Castle, 30 miles away from Durham, when there was strict, explicit instructions not to move because of lockdown. And he went there with his wife and kid, and he said he was going there to test his eyesight. Yeah. So we all know that if you've got dodgy eyesight, you shouldn't even be driving. Anyway, that alone. So there's been huge contradiction and big, ruckus over this, as you would expect, over the bank holiday weekend. We're all told to be staying at home and social distancing, and Dominic Cummings is basically off and out on these big trips up and down the country, and people are not pleased with it. Now, under any normal circumstances, an advisor who had become the story, because he's had to do this story in the Rose Garden, would be sacked. Under any other circumstances, in fact, An advisor who becomes the story would be sacked. This is the golden rule of what we've come to understand as one of the norms of politics in the UK. The second an advisor becomes the story, they're supposed to go. What we have seen is the unprecedented scenario where Dominic Cummings, as an appointed spokesperson and advisor, has come in front of the cameras to talk about what he's done, and he still hasn't apologized. Normally this person, it wouldn't even have got to this stage. So the point is, why is he hanging on? And why is Boris defending him, as he's done on many occasions? And he's also got his senior politician colleagues to defend him as well. This is extraordinary. So I had to look at the charts. Yeah, this is the chart of Dominic Cummings, the D1 chart, the main chart, and the D9 chart, which is considered the X-ray of the main chart. What does that mean? In Vedic astrology, we divide these boxes into 9 sections, and that gives you the D9, the 9th divisional chart, and that is like the X-ray, the scan of the planets. You know, like when someone goes for ultra scan to see their baby in the womb, that deals with the inner workings of the planet. So you look at them both. Here is the chart of Boris Johnson. Now, we know I've already explored Boris Johnson's chart when he was, of course, at death's door a few weeks ago with coronavirus. What I've done here, it looks very complicated. I have overlaid, this is called synastry, I have overlaid on the outside Dominic Cummings' chart, Mr. Cummings and Goings, his chart over Boris Johnson's chart in the middle, and I've done that for the D1 and the Navamsha too, and it is remarkable. Oh my God, this is such juicy stuff, and honestly, this is one of the best comparisons I've ever done, and it's absolute cracker. Because what is abundantly clear is that these two men have a tremendous amount in common, and they also have a lot of past life connection. And I'll explore some of that, but we're talking serious karma together. One of the planets, shall we say, that really shows our karma is planet Saturn. So when you're doing synastry and you're looking at two charts together, if there's any connection between planets and Saturn, that is a very strong indicator of past life connection, and these two guys have it. And also as well, it's to do with the nodes of the moon, but particularly the south node of the moon, Ketu, and any planets that are conjoined that. These two guys have it as well. So we are talking about past life connection here. But not only that, going into their modern day, their numerology is very similar, almost exact, and this relationship has a lot to do with communication, as you would imagine. Dominic is a communications advisor, but also power and secrets. Honestly, and the secrets are just, oh, I mean, I'll be speculating here for your benefit, but let me tell you, whatever Dominic has got on Boris Johnson, it is juicy and it is explosive. Let me take a slurp of my drink here. I'm so excited. My mouth is drying out. All right, so let's get stuck in. Let's set the stage for this. And what I'll do is I'll give you the broad overview, and then we'll go into the bread and meat of the details in terms of Boris's chart. But first, we're going to start with Dominic Cummings. Yeah. Now, this guy is known throughout politics as a very controversial figure, and he is very dynamic, very intelligent man, but known for very much for putting the cat amongst the pigeons. And there's a lot of evidence with that as well. I've spoken in the past about planet Uranus. That is a real shaker-upper. And there are significant aspects that Dominic Cummings has with this planet, especially in regards to his job. So, First of all, I'm going to start with some numerology before I go into the astrology. So Dominic Cummings here, he was born on the 25th of the 11th, 1971. Yeah, I mean, I was actually quite surprised at that as well, because he looks a lot older to me. You know, he's not yet 50, and I think he's looking anyway. I mean, yeah. Let's just leave it there. I was just surprised. I don't want to digress into things. Now, there is no birth time for Dominic Cummings, but as I like with Kim Jong-un. But what I've done is I'm giving him the birth time of 12 noon. The reason why I've done that is, again, influential people tend to be born around about midday, yeah, when the sun is at its highest. And the sun also represents politics along with Saturn. So, of course, he's a big political figure. And I thought, well, you know, it stands to reason. Let's put his time at 12 noon. And guess what? It works. It works. Now, it could transpire that maybe he was born at 11:30 or 10 or 2 p.m. or something like that. But it is likely that he was born when the sun was high, because it has to be. Because when the sun is in the higher houses, it gives more influence to the chart. I mean, it doesn't mean if your sun, like for me, I'm a midnight baby. Doesn't mean that that sun is ineffective. It just means the way it expresses itself is different. But people that are in government or in the public eye tend to have the sun in the higher houses. But it all depends on the chart. Anyway, let's go to the numerology. So when you add up, you know, that birthday, so, you know, 2 plus 5 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 1 equals 27/9. He's a 27/9. Now, this is very, very significant. So let me just read through what it means to be a 27/9. Now, what happens is, now I've taken this reference from this amazing book by Dan Millman. This one here is called The Life You're Born to Live, and it looks at the numerology. Yeah, absolutely fantastic book, and I recommend it to anyone because it is so accurate. Because when you look at Dominic's numerology, then you look at his chart, it all pans out. Anyway, so 27/9. So 9 stands for integrity and wisdom. The 7 stands for trust and openness. And the 2 stands for cooperation and balance. Yeah, so you're probably thinking integrity and wisdom. Dominic doesn't seem to have much of that. However, this is how it works. When you're born with those numbers, you have to face issues manifesting what some of those numbers represent. So if I read on, so those with the 27/9 life path are here to overcome issues of balance, responsibility, self-trust, and integrity as they come to trust and follow spirit manifesting within them and others, living in alignment with the higher wisdom of the heart. Now, isn't that interesting? Because when Boris was defending Cummings, one of the words he used was integrity, wasn't it? He acted with within the law, and he acted with integrity. Now, we know he didn't, but the point is the word has come up, and this has come up with a theme. So if I carry on, I picked out some points. They tend to mentalize experience rather than trust the heart. They must overcome subconscious issues of betrayal and trust their heart. 27/9s tend to trust everyone but themselves. Yeah? Isn't that interesting? Teachers, masters, scientific experts, or advisors, they often live on theories rather than listening to their hearts. Now, wouldn't you say that is a good description for Dominic Cummings? It's all been mentalized. He's come up with this rhetoric. He's not listened to his heart. And only a person that's not listening to their heart can come up with an excuse for driving 30 miles to a beauty spot, to what has been rumored to have a picnic with his family, and say that the reasoning behind that was that he was driving to test his eyesight. I mean, come on. Really? I mean, come on. You're driving, so you think your eyesight is dodgy, and you think the best way to actually test that is to drive 30 miles to a beauty spot, when I think the law of the land is that if you have issues with your eyesight, you shouldn't be driving at all. It beggars belief. Anyone that had any connection to their heart would know that would be a ridiculous thing to say. And actually, you know what, there's a lot to say that if Dominic Cummings early on just did a mea culpa and he was just like, do you know what, I made a mistake. It was wrong what I did. I drove this distance. I was panicking and I was doing it for my son, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what? Most people would have just been like, oh, that is dodgy, but most would have just been like, all right, let's just let it go and move on. But because he's so mentally attached to his ideas, he finds it impossible to let that go. Yeah? Finds it impossible to let that go. And therefore cannot think with the heart and just do the right thing. Yeah? So let's dig into this more, because the astrology gives a lot of brilliant insights here. So first things first, what we need to do is we always look at the first house. So if I put this up here so you can see, this here is the first house, and here you see Rahu in here, the north node of the moon, which means Ketu goes into the 7th. So straight off the bat, and it's in the sign of Capricorn, which belongs to Saturn, which is an karka, an indicator of the government, yeah, and hierarchy and high structures, yeah. Now let's just think about that straight away. First of all, that gives this person what we call in astrology a 1-7 axis, which is the first house, and then the 7th house, which is relationships and other people and the public. So often these people have some kind of, they have very significant relationships that are often fated. They can often feel that their relationships have a huge impact on their life, and sometimes they often have to deal with fame and with the public, particularly when Rahu is in the first house, which is what Dominic Cummings has. Now, I've mentioned before, but Rahu is the head of the dragon, yeah, the severed head of the dragon, and then Ketu is the body. So what happens, what happens to a head that's immortal but it has no body. So when it eats something, it never gets satisfied because it comes through and it just basically falls through, yeah? So this is why Rahu represents obsession. Now, so he has his obsession in his first house, which has a lot to do with his personality and his thoughts, because the first house represents the head. It's in the sign of Capricorn, which is the sign of hierarchy, and essentially deals with the mechanisms of government. And it's ruled by planet Saturn, which also deals with government, yeah, and civil service and stuff like that. So what I've written here is the ego is very strong, exceptional drive for career. And David Cameron said he has a pathological drive for his career, or words to that effect. So already we're seeing how this gives us already an insight into this character. He's basically pretty much pathologically driven. But if we look at the second house here, now the second house deals with our resources. It deals with our values. Our assets, our ability to save, but it's also got a lot to do with speech. Now he's got a very interesting combination here, which is he's got Moon and Mars together, and this is called Chandra Mangal yoga. Now this is very good for money and business and stuff like that. However, we need to remember that Mars is a planet of war, and he's got the planet of war in the second house, which is also associated with speech. Now remember, a lot of people do not like Dominic Cummings because of the way he talks. So in my notes here, I put here Mars in second house, harsh speech, but very strategic, because Mars is also the general, the strategist, yeah? Strategic mind in regards to networks and the people. It's in the sign of Aquarius, which represents the people, the masses. The moon also represents the masses, yeah? But Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, which is a cold, dry planet, and it is enemy to the moon, and it is also enemy to Mars. So both these planets are in an enemy sign. So that makes those two planets kind of a bit more uncomfortable, if you can imagine, and it increases the malefic nature to a degree of Mars. So like I said, it's cold, dry and rational, so it's good for money, but can suggest conflicts with the mother, because Mars is war and Moon is mother, even though they're friendly, or that the mother has very strong opinions but could have a humanitarian streak. The shadow of Aquarius is elitism. So if we think with the sign Aquarius, which deals with the people, the light side of it, the highest expression is altruism, as in terms of feeling, having a goodwill towards the masses and wanting to help the masses. But the shadow side, which obviously is being shown by Cummings, is elitism. Believing that is one rule for you and one rule for the plebs. That is very much the shadow of Aquarius, because Aquarius is a very intellectual sign, and it has great rationalizing abilities, yeah, but it's also cold and dry. So if you think here, he's got the moon here, so it chills the moon, it dries it out, it kind of reduces that kind of empathy to an extent, and it can cause, because the moon is also the mind, it can also cause a person to over intellectualize. And then you see as well, you've got Mars there as well, which is the planet of strategy. So he can over intellectualize his ideas and not really understand why people are justifiably upset with his behavior. Yeah, he either doesn't get it or he just doesn't care, which is the more likely one. And in fact, that's what he said. Actually, he basically said, you know, say what you want to the media, I don't care. So we're dealing with someone who's almost has this pathology around their career, and also as well it's very intelligent, very strategic, but it's got this quite chilled heart. We can also see as well that chilling effect is also increased because here the Saturn retrograde Saturn in his chart in Taurus is also aspecting that moon and that Mars, which afflicts them even more. It adds more malefic intent behind it. Now what's interesting here is that he's got Saturn in the 5th house in Taurus. Now the sign of Taurus is actually great for Saturn. Gives a person great strategic nous, yeah, because it's in the 5th house. And the 5th house is also known as the house of advisors. So you just see this pattern is repeating again and again. He is an advisor. And it's also the house of speculation. But Saturn can be very calculating. It's a very calculating planet. So if you think, when you think of that natural ability for strategy, because Mars actually aspects back, which heats up that Saturn a bit and energizes that Saturn and increases Saturn's ability to strategize in that 5th house. So you can see this is a man that is able to build strategies over a long time, because Saturn is a slow-moving planet. Taurus is an earth sign, and it belongs to one of Saturn's best friends, which is Venus. yeah? So this is a man that that can be very creative with his ideas and yet very strategic and play this long game, yeah? To really kind of get all of his ducks in a row. On top of that, it's in the lunar mansion of Kritika. Now, Kritika belongs to the sun, but Kritika is a cutting nakshatra. It's the ability to cut and dissect and examine the inside of things, yeah? To pull things apart and find out what's going on. So often many surgeons have this nakshatra strong. So you can see in terms, he has this kind of surgical precision with his ideas, and he can cut and dissect things to a great extent, and to find out how these things are working. And boosting that as well is an aspect from Jupiter and the sun, which is also reflects government. But looky here, what do we have here? So in his 11th house, which is to do with the house of great gains, but also the house of the public, and it's relative to Aquarius, so I've already covered that. We have Neptune. Dun, dun, dun. Neptune, as I've said before, is great for many things. Yeah, it gives spirituality, it gives intuition and otherworldly perception. Yeah, but primarily it's also known as the planet of deception. This is very important, and this is aspecting that 5th house by opposition, but most importantly, it's conjunct the sun. Exactly. So if we look here, you may not be able to see, but here we've got the sun at 9 degrees and 9 degrees and 5 minutes. And then we've got Neptune here at 9 degrees, 19 minutes. It's exact. So the 5th house is the kingdom, yeah, where we build our kingdom. So Dominic Cummings has built his kingdom in the 11th house, which also deals with what? The public, yeah, the wider public. So obviously that's his career. He's an advisor to the government. But it's linked with the planet of deception. So one can interpret that as, and especially with Jupiter there, which expands these things, and it's in the sign of Scorpio, which is the sign of intrigue, and naturally associated with the 8th house, which is like hidden secrets, transformations, also scandals. He's got all of this energy in the 11th house with Jupiter boosting it up there in regards to the public. This gives a person an amazing ability to be able to cast spells over the public. Now, isn't that relevant? Is not that relevant, huh? That is remarkable. So this is saying that there is a lot going on here with Dominic Cummings. But there's more. If we look here, with the ascendant being house number 1, the house behind it, because it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, around that this way. So the last house here is house number 12. Now this is very significant. Many people in politics have an active 12th house in some shape or form. Dominic Cummings has got 2 planets there. Now, what's interesting is this. The 12th house is also known as a Dhisthana house. It's a slightly dodgy house. Not as dodgy as the 8th house, but, you know, all the houses have their pros and cons and their merits. It's just a Dhisthana house, so 6, 8, and 12, they just come with more challenges. Yeah. Now, the positive side of the 12th house is spirituality, long distance travels, going to ashrams, other cultures, things that are far, far away. It's also the house of escape. Yeah. Getting away from it all. But then there's the downside, which is precisely that as well. Escape, fantasy, hidden enemies, yeah, but it's also secrets as well. So we have here, Dominic Cummings has got his Venus, which is to do with relationships, and planet Mercury, which is to do with communication, both in the 12th house of secrets, yeah? But on top of that, there is more, because they're in the nakshatra of Mula. Now, Mula, the symbol of Mula is roots, the roots, and it's referred to as tearing up the roots, yeah? So this is someone that is able to get deep down into the roots, into the secrets of things. It's also as well, the 12th house is also associated with being able to influence things from behind the scenes. Yeah? Absolute perfect description of Dominic Cummings, yeah? In the realm, and he has this talent in the and gift in the realm of relationships and communication. So we know already that he's got the 1-7 axis in regards to relationships, and the 12th house is showing a great deal of how those relationships are manifesting. So in short, there's this element of the clandestine, yeah, the hidden, the taboo, all that stuff going on. And when we look at the 11th house and that ability to kind of cast spells with the help of Sun and Neptune, Neptune and Jupiter in that 11th house, it's remarkable, you know, when we look at those things. Also as well, when we look at the 9th house, which is associated with also with politics and with philosophy, we see we've got planet Uranus there and planet Pluto. Now Pluto is the planet of control, yeah, where we see this is the area where we don't want to relinquish control. And what is very interesting here is that it's with planet Uranus. So this is someone who wants to exercise his control via his radical and unpredictable philosophies. That is Dominic Cummings in a nutshell, yeah, in an absolute nutshell. And that is what many people who work in government or have said about Dominic Cummings, either publicly or behind the scenes. They say he really shakes things up, and a lot of people don't like him for that, and he actually gets a lot of pleasure out of that. And by shaking things up, it gives him a sense of power and control. So this is a man who has is very strong philosophies, and it really gives him this sense, his ability to disrupt the status quo, because also as well, Pluto is the planet of transformation, and it likes to explode things, yeah, it likes to blow stuff up. It can also, Pluto can also deal with very, very deep traumas and secrets, and this will become relevant as we move on. Now, just as I start to wrap up on Dominic Cummings, and then I'm going to compare how he influences Boris. Now, the main chart, the D1 chart, I would say this is most strongly relevant for the first 35 years of life. After this, we start moving towards the D9, yeah, the D9, which is the X-ray. So depending on that, the D9 is showing what is the true nature of this planet, yeah. Now what's interesting here, we see Jupiter is here in Scorpio, but in the D9 it moves to Capricorn. Now this is very significant. Jupiter in Scorpio is actually really quite good, because it belongs to one of his best friends, Mars. Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. And Jupiter, Sun and Moon and Mars, they're all friends. So whenever they're in each other's signs, they do well. However, Jupiter is debilitated in the sign of Capricorn, yeah, which is also, like I said, associated with government and hierarchy. Now this is very interesting. What this suggests is that as Dominic has got older and he's matured and he's come into contact with the government, that Jupiter has become increasingly debilitated. So I've put here, and it's in the 12th house. So again, Aquarius ascendant here. So his ascendant moves from Capricorn to Aquarius, but Jupiter moves to Capricorn. So I've said here, this suggests hidden cynical beliefs about the government and the structures of power. Because if we think 12th house is hidden, yeah, and it can also show hidden agendas. Jupiter is in there, but it's in the sign of Capricorn where it's debilitated. Capricorn is very much the corporate side of life and the government. So deep down, he actually has these quite cynical feelings about the government. And he's just maybe manipulating things in really quite a cynical way, because Jupiter is our inspiration and our joy. And when it's in the sign of Capricorn, it can actually be good for finances, but it can also it just takes the ethics out of things. Yeah, this person may not be coming from their highest good, because Jupiter can't do its highest good in Capricorn. And if you think of the transits, we've just recently had Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn all in the sign of Capricorn. Mars has moved off. Jupiter is going retrograde, but he's debilitated at the moment, and that's why it also affects the economy as well. It affects hope. So there can be this hidden sense of hopelessness and almost cynicism in Dominic Cummings' chart. Yeah. Also as well, if we look here, we look at the second house again, and look who's in there. We've got Mars, Saturn, and we've got Pluto in the second house, which again is to do with speech. And it's in the sign of Pisces. Now, Saturn doesn't do well in water signs. Why? Because they're not structured. Pisces is a very unstructured sign. It's a very fluid sign. It can be hard to know how to deal with boundaries in Pisces. So think about this. So what I've put here, I've put poor control over malefic speech, because Mars is a malefic, first-rate malefic. Saturn is definitely a first-rate malefic, and Pluto is hardly a fun planet. Every planet, regardless of if it's malefic, which means cruel in nature, or benefic, which means sweet in nature, they all have their ups and downs. Pluto can be a terrible planet in many ways, but my goodness, the gifts it gives are when one transforms. But it's very intense. And if we think of these intense times that we're going through now, and if we think to a few months ago of the conjunction between Saturn and Pluto and how that just kicked everything off, yeah, back in January. So we've got three very strong planets, very connected with maleficence in his second house. And this is also to do with the second house of values as well. So I'll let you just draw your own conclusions on that. 3 malefics in the second house of values. That's very significant. Here we see Venus and Mercury back together again in the sign of Aries. Aries is a very bombastic sign. So this again showing bombastic communication in relationships. Yeah, Mercury, planet of communication, Venus, planet of relationships, both in the hot sign of Aries, which again is not the best sign for them. And then we can go around the chart. One thing that's interesting here though, his Rahu is quite nice, although it's in the 4th house, which can mean revelations of the home. I think that might be relevant, yeah. When we were looking what has been the debate of where Dominic Cummings, the time he spent in home, was he in lockdown or not, you know, when he went up to Durham, so you know it's stuff to do with that. But opposite the 4th house is the 10th house, and here we see something very significant. And this is south node of the moon with the moon. Now it's a very interesting combination, because the moon is very intuitive, And the south node of the moon is the most intuitive, probably the most intuitive planet out there, yeah? Ketu. No head, but it can just feel, and it deals with spirituality and moksha. He's got that in the career section, which also further illustrates it's an unusual career. Ketu gives an unusual career. In his main chart, it's in the 7th house, so we know that's part of his destiny. But when we see how that destiny is manifesting, when we look in a Navamsha, it's in an unusual career, and it's with the moon. Now remember, the moon also represents the masses, and the 10th house is the highest house that can be seen by everyone. So what I've written here is the deep psychic intuition in regards to the public, moon, and career has an uncanny ability to tune into policy that will resonate most with the public. The 10th house is a public house. He's got the moon in the 10th, which can also give fame, actually. But I think with that south node of the moon and the Rahu influence, it's brought a lot of notoriety, yeah, in regards to public affairs, and it's been connected with his home, and look how that's come out. We also see here as well, planet Uranus moves to the sign of Cancer, which of course the moon is the lord of Cancer, and it's in the 10th house, and it's also being aspected by Ketu, and it's in his 6th, and the 6th house is job. So we can see how his job is connected with his 10th house of the public, yeah, and being seen, and one's reputation. And he's got planet Uranus there, which is the radical, shocking planet. So his job brings shocks and surprises, which affects the 10th house, and by extension, because the moon is there, his relationship with the public. And that is exactly what's going on right now. So I just thought I would share those points, because isn't that fascinating? And really, that is some juicy stuff. All right, so let's move on to Boris. Now, what is fascinating with Boris is that he's a number 9 as well. Honestly, you couldn't make this up. You could not make this up. All right, so if we look at Boris' birth date, so he was born on the 19th of the 6th, 1964. Now, when you add all of that up, 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 4, 36, 9. So he's resonating with the energy of 9 as well, like Dominic Cummings, but it's slightly different. So 9 is dealing again with integrity and wisdom. 6 is vision and acceptance. And 3 is expression and sensitivity. So we know that, you know, Boris likes to see himself as a man of vision. He's always talking about these things. We know he's very expressive. And we know there's probably an issue, well, not even probably, there are issues around integrity and wisdom, especially in regards to now. How wise has he been when it comes to Dominic Cummings? So let me just read what some of the relevance is here. So 36 9s must work through issues of emotional honesty, perfectionist ideals, and self-doubt as they learn to live in accord with the wisdom of their heart and to serve as an example of integrity to others. Huh? Now we can understand if, as you know, the life you were born to live describes, it says those energies that we come in with, these are the energies where we struggle with in terms of life. And my goodness, with Boris's track record, we know that he struggles with honesty, wisdom, and integrity, doesn't he? It's just the way. It's just the way. That's the only honest kind of analysis that one can give. That's just how it's been. It's up to him if he goes up to these higher values. But there's been doubt over these areas of Boris's life for his whole career, frankly. And there are many people that will go on the record and have gone on the record to state that. So this is really interesting. So what I want to show you here is, like I was saying before, but there's something in synastry. When you have past life connections with someone, there will be, your planets will join up. Yeah. So with Dominic and Boris, out of the 12 houses of the zodiac, I can see here that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas. 5 areas where Boris's chart and Dominic's chart overlap, where there is a planetary connection, and sometimes it's actually even exact. And then what I did was I looked at Boris's D9 chart, the smaller one. Boris is in the middle, Dominic on the outside, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 positions out of 12 where Dominic's and Boris's charts connect and overlay. I can tell you from an esoteric perspective, at least, that I can say that these two have had a very, very strong past life connection, and they're here to work out karma together on the public sphere, because they've both got the energy of 9. The only difference is that Boris has got some 6 energy as well, which is working in terms of the vision. But he's a prime minister, yeah, and that's what prime minister's supposed to have, vision. So when I was looking through this, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. So first things first, let's get into the nitty gritty. Here, this is Dominic's 12th house and Boris's 4th house, yeah, which is the home, yeah, but also the heart and the emotions. So it's the south node of the moon. And this means that wherever the south node is, we have to, we feel like there's a little hole in there. We never feel quite satisfied in that area. So what this suggests is that emotionally, Boris struggles with his emotions. He's also as well got Kim Drummer moon, which I forgot to mention, I think, in the last one, which means that the moon is isolated. This can make a person feel very lonely in life because the moon has no company, and the moon is very sensitive and it likes company from other planets. And then on top of that, he's got Ketu in the 4th house. So this can show there is an aspect to Boris where it's hard for him to satisfy his to find peace, yeah, because the 4th house is also a house of contentment, to find peace and solace. So where's he tried to find that peace? It's where the north node goes, which is the 10th house, which is the career, yeah, and a public life, to try and fill that hole privately, yeah. And that's why you often see a lot of politicians have Rahu in the 10th house, because there's some dissatisfaction that they have and they try and fulfill themselves in the 10th, and that's actually part of their destiny. So we can see here, but it falls into Dominic's 12th house. So remember we said that this is the house of secrets, and we know that he's an advisor. So in private, hidden things that are behind, Dominic is giving a lot of kind of solace and comfort, because Venus is also the planet of comfort. Mercury is the planet of communication. Boris feels he deeply needs Dominic Cummings. Now this has become obvious to us because of course he won't sack the guy, but it proves really what many of us were suspecting all along. There is a deep need for Boris to have Dominic Cummings around. What's even more fascinating is if we look here, this is Boris's ascendant, which is in Virgo under Vedic astrology. Boris's Vedic ascendant basically falls with Dominic Cummings' Uranus and Pluto. So we know what is Pluto. It's about control. So we can see here, because Boris doesn't have a planet in the 1st house, Now, just because a house doesn't have a planet doesn't mean that house is not working. It just means it has less emphasis. So when you have a planet in the first house, it boosts that first house. The first house is the sense of identity, yeah? Boris doesn't have that, and it's also in the sign of Virgo, which can also be quite a doubting and self-critical sign. But Dominic has got Pluto and Uranus there. So this, and what is Pluto? Pluto is power and control. And planet Uranus is this very unusual things, yeah? Planet of liberation, but shocks and surprises. So this shows that, this can illustrate that Dominic has this unusual power over Boris, which Boris himself is probably not even quite sure of how to even deal with it. But as we look at that 12th house where you've got Dominic's Venus and Mercury kind of talking to that south node of Boris, it's like with those two kind of like touch points, which are both angles, houses 1 and 4, 7 and 10 are angles. We can see there this kind of angular power that Dominic has over Boris's psyche, essentially. And I think it's so profound that the idea of Dominic not being there is almost too traumatic for him to actually contemplate sacking this guy. And I think this is why he's held on, because any other prime minister, Dominic would have been gone, you know, days ago. So this is I hope this helps gives you insight as to why this is such a profound connection. What's also interesting here is if we look at Boris's third house, Boris has no planets in the third house. But when it's overlaid with Dominic's chart, Dominic has got what? That Sun, Neptune and Jupiter in Boris's third house of communication. So that ability, like I said, to cast illusions and all that stuff, Boris probably really admires that, because he sees that as some kind of great power that Dominic has. So again, that's another area where he dominates. However, if we look at Boris's second house, we see here we've got the moon with Neptune. Yeah? Remember what I said Neptune was all about? You know, it can also create illusions and deceptions, and it's in his second house of speech, in the sign of Libra. Now, Libra is a very eloquent sign. It's a very charming sign, yeah? Sign of charm. It's also the ascendant sign of the UK. You know, we're known for diplomacy and politeness and queuing and all this kind of stuff. So what this shows is that Boris has this very charming yet deceptive speech. And this just comes instinctually to him, because the moon represents our instincts, yeah? Our default position. Isn't that interesting? And then we see that same connection with Dominic Cummings, but with the sun. So both of their luminaries are connected to a very mysterious and often deceptive planet, but it gives great talents of persuasion, yeah, and illusion, and like an artistic flair. It's like they say, wherever Neptune is, it can cast a spell in that house. So really, you only kind of want Neptune maybe like the 5th house of like creativity, or maybe something like the 12th house, which already deals with illusions, and maybe 1 or 2 other places that I can't think of now. But anyway, I digress. Neptune is a tricky planet. So we see that overlay. If we go to the next one, we're in the sign of Aquarius. Boris has got his Saturn there in the 6th house. That's actually very good, actually. That's a good placement for Saturn. It's in its own sign. It's in the 6th house of work. So we all know that Boris works hard, you know, whatever, at his job. It also is a sign that deals with the public. So he's very strategic that way, and it's also retrograde. But looky here. Dominic's moon and Mars connect up with Boris's Saturn. So if for Boris's is its 6th house, and as I said before, it's in Dominic's 2nd house of speech. So you can see how Dominic's speech influences Boris's job. The 6th house is job. So it's quite literally, so that is a karmic connection, especially is because it's connected with planet Saturn. So it's remarkable. So if we go round, if we look at Boris's 9th house, we see there's another connection here, but this time with Dominic's Saturn. So what's the 9th house? The 9th house is politics, philosophy and beliefs. So in the 9th, Boris has got Mars and Mercury. Now, it's a great place for Mars, but it's Mars and Mercury are enemies to each other. Yeah, so there's this conflict between the two. But like I said, the 9th house is our philosophies, how we go on about, how we think about things. And we see here, this connects with Dominic's 5th house. Now, you remember I said that the 5th house is also the house of counsel and giving advice. So Dominic is directly influencing Boris's philosophies. It's quite literally as simple as that. However, Saturn and Mars don't get along. So there's this influence where this kind of cold, dry philosophy is sort of having a bit of a damaging impact on that Mars. Also as well, you know, this Mars in Boris's chart also aspects Dominic's chart and those planets of Jupiter, Neptune and the Sun. In Dominic's 11th house, and that comes to the 3rd. So you can see there is this dynamic connection between the speech, the policy and philosophies, yeah, and how it's communicated. It's absolutely remarkable. We can see how all these houses are connected to each other, except for the ascendant, which has no direct aspect in Boris's chart, but nonetheless it's conjunct Dominic Cummings' planets. So there's that. I mean, that's remarkable enough as it is already. I don't want this video to be too long, but it just continues. So if we look here at the Navamsha, and both of these men are in their Navamsha, there's even more profound connection. So we see here that Dominic Cummings' moon and south node directly connects up with Boris's Venus and Sun in his 6th house of job. 6th house here. And it's in the career part, 10th house of Dominic Cummings. Job and careers connected. And this is why people have said, why is Boris staking his career to kind of save Cummings and essentially joining the two together? It's literally joined in the Navamsha. Here, we see here, this is Boris's 8th house, Cummings' 2nd house, speech, influencing what? The areas of transformation. Boris has also got Saturn in the 8th house of his Navamsha. Now that is the 8th house can deal with scandals, yeah, shame and embarrassment. So we can see here the things that, oh no, actually, it's actually Dominic's 12th house in the Navamsha. 12, so sorry, 12 and 8 are together, 2 Dhisthana houses. So we can see here that there is a good chance that Dominic's secrets, or the secrets he knows about Boris, could bring him shame and disgrace. 12 and 8 together. I couldn't see because of the orange. So I've written here, this is a fateful combination of karma planets in the houses of secrets and transformation. So there is stuff that Dominic knows about Boris that could just basically completely transform or maybe even devastate his career. And then if we look here, so we look again. So in Boris's 10th house of career, Mars is there, which is a good combination, but that combines with Dominic's 2nd house. And we see Mars, Saturn, Pluto. So again, what Dominic says has a huge influence, and it's connected to Boris's career. And then if we go to the next sign along, there we are, we've got Neptune again, and then we've got Venus and Mercury. So this is connected with Boris's 11th house, which again is dealing with the public. And he's got Neptune there, the planet of illusions. But then that connects directly with Dominic's 3rd house, which is speech. And what we can see here is that the speech planet, Mercury, of communication, is exact with Boris's Neptune in regards to speech to the public. Can you believe it? It is exact. So it's Cummings is his Venus is 18 degrees 20 minutes, and Boris's Neptune is 18 degrees 32 minutes in Aries. Yeah, that kind of bombastic sign. Remarkable. Also as well, I'll do my last little 2 comparisons here. When we look at the 6th house of job, Dominic Cummings on the outside, and Boris's speech, 2nd house, planet Uranus, they're exact again. Dominic Cummings is at 28 degrees 30 minutes, and Boris's is at 29 degrees 50 minutes. Extraordinary. And then lastly, if we look here, so this is Dominic's 8th house, and then Dominic's 8th house and Boris's 4th house in the Navamsha D9. Now, 4th house is home and emotions again. Boris has got Pluto there. So this is showing that he's trying very, very hard to control his emotions. Yeah, but he's having explosive feelings. And then we see here, Dominic's Sun is there and his Neptune. So again, there's these secrets, and there are elements the Sun illuminates where I feel it's almost as if Dominic has said, if you sack me, I'm going to tell everything. I'm going to reveal all your secrets. So with that, I'm going to finish up. I hope you found that interesting. If you want a consultation with me, you can have a consultation with me on the archetypalblueprint.com. The information will be below in the description. And yeah, been very busy at the moment, lots of clients, so let's keep it going. It's wonderful, and I'm so glad to be able to help people. And this is the kind of way that I will look at your chart if we were to do a comparison or just an overview. Really get deep in there and find out what's going on, which can really help with career and the future. So I'm going to stop it there. I hope you've enjoyed that video, but whoa, wasn't it juicy? So I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.